with that swing, Jose Altuve sends the Astros to yet another World Series, which begins Tuesday, tomorrow, against the Washington Nationals. Good morning, everybody. This is Arnie, and welcome to Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports. And yes, I'm a little bit sad this morning because my beloved Yankees are out, and so life will go on without them in the playoffs. But wasn't that just one of the most exciting ninth innings you'll ever see? I mean, for LeMahieu to homer in the top of the ninth off of Osuna to tie the game, and then for Altuve to come up with 2 outs in the bottom of the ninth to win the game. Wow. I mean, if you're a baseball fan, and we are, then you got to love what you saw Saturday night in Houston.
I want to say good morning to the chat room. Coronas Cyclonas, Doug Boyle, George, Lenny, Royals 29, Boom, Kevin Hastings, that guy, Unholy Toledo, DK Lush. Great to see you guys in the chat room this morning. And yesterday, just for an aside, here's a little commercial, okay? It's fantasy football season. I'm in a league against Chappie, Phil Chaplin. I'm playing him yesterday, head to head. I'll say for later who won, okay? But there is a Monday night player, but it will not be relevant in the final analysis of who won head-to-head between me and Phil Chaplin this week. But I'll save that for a little later. Let's talk a little more baseball. But it's great to see you guys in the chat room this morning, Unholy with the sunglasses on. I love it. I love it. Lenny, great job this morning. Not sure where you'll be today or tomorrow or this week, but I guarantee you this. Wherever you are, it's going to be great. You and Andrea have a great day, and this network, it's just totally incredible to be a part of this. Talking baseball this morning. Our schedule for the day, pitches get stitches at 1. Kevin Hastings on at 2. Aloha, fantasy baseball. Roto Imbeciles on at 6:30 tonight, and Fantasy Fisticuffs close out our day tonight at 11 o'clock. So let's get back to some baseball.
So now we're set up for Tuesday night in Houston. The Nationals come to town. And of course, when you talk Houston and you talk the Nationals, you got to talk starting pitching. You got 6 stud starting pitchers. The big 3, you can call it. The Astros group, you've got Garrett Cole, who will go in game 1. You've got Verlander, well, not game 1, excuse me. You got Verlander, who Cole is their number 1. Verlander, who is their number 2, and what a strong number 2. And then you've got Greinke. Now, Greinke's been a little disappointing in the offseason, but you never know now that you get to the next level. He's not going to be playing in Yankee Stadium, and that's where he's never really performed well. But you got those big 3. For the Nationals, of course, you've got Scherzer, you've got Strasburg, and adding this year's free agent signing, Patrick Corbin. Now, what's interesting about Corbin, Scherzer, Strasburg, Cole, Greinke, and Verlander, all 6 of those starters were all top 20 in ERA among qualified pitchers. Cole was 3rd, Verlander 4th, Scherzer 8th, Greinke 9th, Corbin 13th, and Strasburg 16th. It's the first World Series since 1945, Lenny, you got to remember that one, to feature 6 of the top 20 pitchers in ERA. The only other World Series to feature 6 of the top 15 such pitchers in a single year. Well, here were the pitchers, and then you can tell me the year. Lenny, I know you know this one. It was the Giants and the A's. It was Christy Mathewson, who was 2nd in the league, Red Ames 9th, Joe McGinnity 12th, and for the A's it was Rube Waddle 3rd, Eddie Plank 4th, and Andy Coakley 15th. No World Series has ever had more than 6 of the top 15. Now that year where it was the Giants and the A's, we have to go all the way back when we find another World Series featuring 6 of the top 15 top pitchers in a single year. It was 1905. 1905. So isn't it safe to say that pitching's a lot different now than it was back in 1905? And since it hasn't happened at any point until now, it's certainly notable. Now, I didn't even mention Anibal Sanchez, who was 27th in ERA among qualifiers with a 3.85 ERA. And Anibal Sanchez, the Nationals' fourth starter, has allowed only one run in 12 2/3 innings in this postseason. And remember, he went deep in one game with a no-hit bid. So you got the Nationals with 4 solid starters. And let's look at Game 6 of the ALCS, where both teams basically didn't have what they thought was a reliable fourth starter. And so you had what they called a bullpen game. And with bullpen games, you just don't ever know what you're going to get. So when we get to Game 4, I think you've certainly got to favor the Nationals. Anibal Sanchez will pitch in Game 4 in Washington. So let's look at those first 3 games. You're going to have quite a matchup. But to add to that buildup, I first want to look at strikeouts. We just talked about ERA. 5 of the 6 pitchers I mentioned a few moments ago were in the top 10 in strikeouts. Cole first, Verlander second, Strasburg 6th, Scherzer 8th, and Corbin 10th. This is the first World Series to ever feature at least 5 of the top 10 pitchers in strikeouts. The first, 2019. So we can look for some strikeouts, right? These 2 teams, the Nationals and the Astros, combined for 2,073 strikeouts this season. By far, the most ever combined regular season strikeouts by starters in a World Series. Looking back at starters from previous World Series, in 2018, Dodgers-Red Sox, combined starters struck out 1,870 batters. That's 203 less than this year. 2017, Dodgers and Astros, 1,843, 230 less than this year. 2016, the Indians and Cubs, 1,806 strikeouts. So we're now talking 267 less strikeouts in the season. Something else worth noting on the National side is the fact that they've used each of their 200 strikeout starters from the regular season in relief this postseason. All 3, Scherzer, Strasburg, and Corbin. And no other team in postseason history has ever used more than one pitcher in the postseason in relief that had 200 regular season strikeouts for them that year. And the Nationals, they've used all 3 of theirs. So looking at this 2,073 strikeouts, it's just the 6th World Series between the top 2 teams in starting pitching strikeouts from that regular season. The last time it happened was in 2001, when the Diamondbacks led the major leagues in strikeouts and the Yankees finished 2nd. Before that, this hadn't happened in a World Series since 1930, when the A's, who were first, and the Cardinals 2nd. The only other 3 times, you got to go way back, 1929, 1911, and 1905. So the fact that you've got a matchup between the 2 teams that rank 1st and 2nd in strikeouts from starting pitchers, this is something special. It doesn't happen very often. And when you consider the last time it happened was 1930, Lenny, remember that one? I mean, it just doesn't happen. But it's happening this year as Washington and Houston square off starting Tuesday night.
I've got a program correction. My fault. Let me make sure we know our schedule today. Once more, chat room. At 11 o'clock this morning, it's Kevin Hastings, Aloha Fantasy Baseball. Kevin's slot has been moved from 2 p.m. until 11 this morning. So he's next up. I guess he's on deck, right, Kevin? Can't wait to hear Kevin this morning at 11, so tune in for that. The rest of our schedule, as far as I know, is still the same. Roto Imbeciles tonight, at 6:30, and Fantasy Fisticuffs Baseball will be at 11 o'clock. So I want to make sure I got the schedule straight. I think that straightens it out. If it doesn't, I hope somebody will please let me know.
So as we start Tuesday, the Nationals have yet to reveal their starting rotation, but I suspect that all signs are pointing towards Mad Max Scherzer, who is 2-0 with a 1.80 ERA this postseason, getting the ball and being on the hill Tuesday night, beginning a little after 8 o'clock in Houston. Now, Scherzer, he's come off back-to-back excellent outings. He allowed a combined 1 run on 5 hits with 5 walks, with 18 strikeouts in 14 innings in his last 2 postseason starts. Now, in his career, Scherzer has made 1 World Series appearance, starting Game 4 in 2012 with the Tigers, where he struck out 8 in 6 1/3 innings, but it was a 4-3 loss to the Giants. Don't you know Scherzer is ready to toe that hill Tuesday night? For the Astros Tuesday night, it'll be Garrett Cole, who didn't have to pitch Game 7, and so now he's going to be pitching Game 1 of the World Series. He's 3-0 with a 0.40 ERA this postseason. Wow. Verlander will follow in Game 2 on Wednesday. Cole is on one of those Hershisean runs. Okay, it reminds me of Hershiser in '88. You look at these numbers, and it's incredible. He is 19-0 in his last 25 starts with a 1.59 ERA, 0.81 WHIP, and check this out. Speaking of strikeouts, 258 strikeouts in 169 1/3 innings. Now, these last 25 starts also include his playoff stints this year. The Astros have won each of his last 16 starts, and he's lights out at home. So I don't know what the line's going to be Tuesday night. I haven't looked at it, but it's one of those games where if I saw the line was over and under of 6, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, do you really expect either Scherzer or Cole to give up a lot of runs Tuesday night in Game 1? Remember, the only thing I'm thinking about here, the Astros are on a roll, okay? That win Saturday night against the Yankees has got to propel them going forward. I know they didn't have much time off, but when you're hot, do you really want much time off? The Nationals have been off for a week. You know, they haven't played since early last week, sweeping the Cardinals in 4. So you can say, well, they may be a little cold. At the same time, they've had all the time in the world to give their starting pitchers a little rest. And with the injuries of Scherzer, don't you know they were probably glad to have that. Looking at the bullpens for just a moment, you know, in the NLCS, Washington may have found a gem in Tanner Rainey. He struck out 3 and didn't walk a batter in a pair of appearances during the series. So adding Tanner Rainey to a group that already included Daniel Hudson and Sean Doolittle probably gives Nats manager Davey Martinez 3 relievers that he believes he can actually hand the ball to in pressure situations. Now remember, Houston clinched the ALCS by using a bullpen game. They used 7 relief pitchers in the Game 6 win over the Yankees. Now, they should all be rested and ready for the World Series since they had Sunday off and now today off. Roberto Osuna threw the most innings among any Astros reliever in the ALCS with 5. Will Harris, Joe Smith, Josh James. They each tossed 3 2/3 innings. Now, Brad Peacock and Jose Urquidy will also give them some depth. What I'm saying here is, it appears to me, what I've seen so far, Houston's bullpen will be good. They're much deeper than Washington's, and when these games, if these games become bullpen games, I think that favors the Astros. The kicker here is this: Washington is so strong at the starting pitching level. And I expect to see Scherzer, Corbin, Strasburg, and even Sanchez go deep into games. So whereas the Yankees were probably looking at using starting pitcher for 5, maybe 6 innings, the Nationals are looking at 7 or 8. It makes a huge difference. Also, you can have your starting pitchers pitching on normal rest with Washington because of the fact they have 4 with the off day in between. So you're going to be lined up, the way I see it, with Strasburg pitching in again in Game 5, Scherzer in Game 5, Strasburg in Game 6, and Corbin to pitch Game 7, with Strasburg available out of the bullpen, and we know he's already done that once if it goes to the 7 games. Houston, on the other hand, Game 4 is going to be tricky. Do they bring Cole back on short rest, which would, on short rest, allow him to pitch 3 times in the World Series? That's where I see him going. I don't see Houston throwing a bullpen game in a World Series. Now, if they're up 3-0, they may do it. In fact, I would do it. I wouldn't rush Garrett Cole back on short rest if you have a 3-0 lead. But if that thing is 2-1 or 1-2, what do? 2-1, I rest him. 1-2, I probably bring him back. We'll see.
And I see where Kevin has posted that the book has 7 as the over and under. Again, I'm not expecting a real high over and under. 7's pretty low as far as games go, don't you think? And Kevin also says he's got to think Scherzer, Stros, Corbin. I agree with that totally. And then what the Nationals do after Game 3 may depend on what the status is as well. You know, I just talked about what Houston might do. Well, if Washington's down 3-0 after 3, don't you think you can see Scherzer back and Strasburg back on shorter rest? I mean, then it's survive, right? You got to survive. So what I'm talking about is if we're into a series where it's 2-1, 1-2 after 3 versus a 3-0 World Series, if either team is down 3-0, it's all hands on deck, and you've got to throw what you can. I don't see that. I just see this series much more competitive than what odds makers are putting it at. I'm not going to be surprised at all if Washington doesn't win 1 in Houston. I think they will win 1 in Houston. If you're 1-1 going back home, then you got 3 in a row in the nation's capital, and I think it's going to be a great series. I really do. Even though it's Yankee-less, Kevin, okay, I still think it's going to be a heck of a series coming up starting Tuesday night.
It'll be an interesting chess match on how A.J. Hinch handles Game 4. And I don't think he's willing to comment on that yet. Sure he hasn't. Hey, he hasn't even announced his Game 3 starter, really, I don't think. But I don't expect a Game 4 decision until we see how the series starts. Now, are there any injuries of note? Nationals? Absolutely not. Ryan Presley, he's the only member of the bullpen to make the All-Star team this year for Houston. In the 3rd inning of Game 6 Saturday night, some scar tissue in his surgically repaired right knee apparently came loose while fielding a grounder, causing him to leave the game. Now, Presley says he thinks he'll be able to pitch in the World Series. No official report back from Houston. And who's hot and who's not hitting the ball coming into the World Series? Knowing all this, look, we spent 15 minutes talking about how great the pitching is, and it truly is. But who's hot coming into the World Series hitting the ball? Well, for the Nationals, Anthony Rendon. He's hit in 8 straight postseason games. He's got a .462 average over those games. Red hot. And Howie Kendrick, named the National League Championship Series Most Valuable Player, posting an OPS of 1.012. Kendrick is 36 years old, and remember, he's a year and a half removed from major surgery. Kendrick, not Rendon, not Soto, but Kendrick led the Nationals offense during their 4-game sweep of the Cardinals, hitting .333 with 4 of his 5 hits going for extra bases. And so we'll see how the 36-year-old prepares and performs in a World Series where he's basically going to be facing 3 strong right-handed starting pitchers and a bullpen that is also loaded with right-handed starting pitching. I said starting pitching. I meant just relievers with right arms that pitch. How about that? So, bottom line, Houston right-handed pitching heavy, whether it be starters, whether it be bullpen, and that's what Kendrick, Rendon, they're going to have to face. So, who could be a key left-handed bat for the Nationals in the World Series? Easy. Juan Soto. How about Juan Soto? I think Soto is probably the key player hitting-wise for the Nationals coming into the World Series. Also, you've got left-handed hitting Adam Eaton hitting near the top of the order. Asdrubal Cabrera could get more playing time, especially with the designated hitter in the American League. I could easily see Kendrick being the designated hitter in games 1 and 2, which will open it up for Asdrubal Cabrera to get some at-bats and give the Nationals a third left-handed bat. That's probably it. Now, will they let Matt Adams possibly get in some at-bats against these right-handed pitchers? And I don't see that being a starting position for the Nationals going into the series, but I tell you what, you let a couple of these right-handed bats go cold, and don't be surprised to see Matt Adams getting some play at first base. And I'm particularly talking about Ryan Zimmerman. If Zimmerman bats look slow against these Astro pitchers, expect to see more Matt Adams. It would also add a fourth left-handed bat to that lineup and a good strong power bat in that lineup, particularly in a DH position. I really like the fact that that is a wild card play for the Nationals going into the World Series. For Houston, and I know it's a dramatic ALCS, but they only hit 179 in the ALCS. They did most of their damage with 8 home runs, including a pair of walk-offs. The way they line up, Springer, Altuve, Brantley, Bregman, Gurriel, Alvarez, Correa, Reddick, Chirinos, that's probably the way they're going to go most games. But note this, Altuve did hit 348 in the ALCS with 2 homers and a team-high 6 runs scored. Brantley hit 304. But check out the remaining statistics here. Correa, 4 for 22. And I know he had that one game where he homered to win the game. But for that one game, not a good series for Correa hitting. Bregman, 3 for 18. That's a 167 average. Reddick, 2 for 12. Another 167 average. Springer, 4 for 25. 160. Gurriel, 3 for 24. 125 average. And the rookie Jordan Alvarez, 1 for 22 with 12 strikeouts in the ALCS. So Bregman, Reddick, Springer, Gurriel, Alvarez, and even Correa, 7 hitters who overall really underperformed against Yankee pitching that, frankly, starting-wise at least, is not nearly as good as the Nationals starting pitching. But for Reddick and Alvarez, those right-handed bats, Houston is very right-handed strong in that batting order. You got Reddick, you got Alvarez, you got Brantley. Other than that, it's going to be tough going against right-handed pitchers. So I'm not looking for a lot of offense from Houston in this World Series. And that's why I think the first 2 games in Houston are ultra important, if you will, for the home team. If Washington goes into Houston and wins 1 out of 2 or wins both, the Astros are in a very tough situation. They don't have a DH in games 3, 4, and 5. So Jordan Alvarez will not be in the lineup, is my prediction. They haven't played him in the field all postseason. I don't see why they would start now. So I look at Alvarez being dropped in the lineup. That means the loss of a left-handed bat against 4 right-handed starters, all 3 right-handed starters in Washington, minus a left-handed bat. So, I'm not saying panic if you're a Astros fan. I am saying beware. And how loose are these teams? When you think back to in May where Washington was 19-31, and a lot of people, fantasy-wise, reality-wise, were writing them off, talking about which players to trade, who would they trade. They traded no one. They kept their core. They actually went out and picked up, a player off the scrap heap as Drupal Cabrera, who helped them tremendously. Trey Turner's had a solid year. Adam Eaton, Anthony Rendon, Soto. This is a scrappy bunch. And don't be surprised if the Nationals come in here and win this World Series. In fact, here we go. I'm going to take the Nationals over the Houston Astros. I think Houston expended a lot of energy, a lot of emotion in this series against the Yankees. Washington, they've been able to sit back and wait, get everything lined up, have their own private workouts. I think Washington will win the World Series. Now, could I be wrong? Sure, I've been wrong before many times. But I think the starting pitching is better, and I think the clutch hitting will be there. And you've got a group in Washington. There's something going on here with this crowd. They've been playing lights-out baseball since the 1st of July, and I expect it to continue in the World Series. So let's take a look for a few minutes at managerial openings. The Mets have asked Carlos Beltran to come back for a second interview. According to the New York Post, they also have a second interview lined up with Eduardo Perez, Joe Girardi, and Tim Bogar. These four are part of a group of 8 candidates in the running to be the team's next manager. The other names include Luis Rojas, Mike Bell, Derek Shelton, and Skip Schumacher. Espada is to have a second interview with the Cubs. Joe Espada, Astros bench coach, after his club clinched a World Series berth on Saturday night. He spent his Sunday in Chicago having a second interview for the Cubs managerial job. He first interviewed with the club on Monday of last week. The Cubs have interviewed interim candidates David Ross, Mark Loretta, and Will Venable, as well as Joe Girardi and Gabe Kapler. Espada is the first to be known to have a second interview, and he's widely considered one of the top candidates for the job along with David Ross. Buck Showalter, Joe Girardi, and Dusty Baker. Now, those are 3 heavy-hitting names, right? They're the only known candidates for the Phillies job to date. Their search, according to Todd Zolkak of MLB, is wrapping up shortly. So it'll probably be between those 3 candidates. Now, MLB reporter John Heyman reported the principal owner of the Phillies, John Middleton, who made the call to dismiss Gabe Kapler, has been checking with Philadelphia players on their opinions of Buck Showalter. Kind of strange, I think. You're going to let the convicts run the prison or the inmates run the asylum. But that's what he's supposed to be doing. Polling players on Buck Showalter, which is what he did before he let Gabe Kapler go. Now, Buck has front office links in Philly and likely support. We'll have to see. Showalter has ties to Philadelphia's front office, as I just said. When Buck was managing the Orioles, he and Phillies president Andy MacPhail were together in Baltimore. MacPhail was the president of baseball's operations for the Orioles from 2010 to 2015. So Heyman said that Middleton's heavily involved, but may prefer Girardi or Baker to Buck Showalter. So what do I make from that? Who knows? They're going to hire probably one of the 3, and we'll see how that all shakes out. And the Phillies need a strong leader in that clubhouse. Here you go. I'll go on a limb. I think managing Bryce Harper is a chore within itself, apparently. Say what you want. He's got a lot of talent, but from what I see and what I read in reports, he may be a little difficult to manage on a team. And so you got to have a strong personality. Girardi, Buck Showalter, and Dusty Baker all fit that mold. And so I think that's why the Phillies are going that route with one of these managers to see how, their club will respond to new leadership, because it's certainly not for lack of talent. Now, you look at free agents, Sure, a lot of free agents on the market. Who are some key free agents this year? As I go down the list and look, I'm looking for pitching, and more specifically starting pitching. And look here, it's not a big pile of talent here. Jake Odorizzi's a free agent. Michael Pineda, who was suspended at the end of the season, he's a free agent. Both of those guys from the Twins. Astros ace Garrett Cole has got to be the pick of the litter, so to speak. Clearly heads and shoulders above any other free agent on the market. Oakland Athletic, Brett Anderson. I mean, these are all middle-of-the-road type of pitchers. No one is really you're looking at here other than Garrett Cole, who's going to blow you away. Dallas Keuchel's a free agent coming off that one-year contract with Atlanta. Keep going down the list. You got Zach Wheeler with the Mets, who's a free agent. Steven Strasburg can't opt out of his deal. He has 4 years of $100 million remaining. Don't expect that to happen, but it could happen. The Brewers have a few free agents. Chase Anderson, Gio Gonzalez. Cardinals, Michael Wacha, Adam Wainwright. The Pirates, Chris Archer. Remember, we talked about that trade over from Tampa. The Dodgers, Rich Hill, Hyun-Jin Ryu. They're both free agents. Possible good upside. Madison Bumgarner, probably the number 2 starting pitching free agent coming up this year. So there are, a few gems, but for the most part, middle-of-the-road pitchers. So if you're needing an ace, New York Yankees, you're looking at a Garrett Cole or you're looking at a Madison Bumgarner. Anybody who invests in Rich Hill and Hyun-Jin Ryu for the Dodgers, you know what you're getting. You're getting some good talent, but you're also getting pitchers who are injury-prone. So as I look at it, there are really only 2 ace-type pitchers, and Garrett Cole is much, much on a different plane and level than Madison Bumgarner. But to me, those are the 2 gems in the offseason that will be really scouted and courted by major league teams. So
let's see what's going on in chat room. It's great when I get positive feedback. Kevin Hastings says, I like the Nats as well. There you go. So it's 2 votes at least for the Nationals. And Kevin, I know you're coming on at 11 right after I finish up here. I'm finishing in just a few moments. But the thing I like the Nats fact that they are such an underdog, and I go back again. I mentioned Hershiser earlier, but remember in 1988, the Dodgers had great starting pitching, including Oral Hershiser, of course, and the hitting, well, who knew? But they were underdogs against the Mets. They were underdogs against Oakland, and they beat the Mets and they beat the A's. Well, have the Nats really been a favorite on paper in any series so far this year? They played the Dodgers in the first round. They beat the Dodgers. They weren't the favorites. They played Atlanta. They played St. Louis. They weren't the favorites. St. Louis had just beaten Atlanta decisively. And so here they are, underdogs again. I think way to go, Zelmo. Zelmo makes it 3-0 in favor of the Nationals. I just think the Nationals have got this chip on their shoulder, and veterans like Howie Kendrick, who not much of a fielder, but he's a great hitter, and you got people who they're pulling together all at the right time. There's just something about the Nationals team that I really like, and that's why I think they're going to win. And I don't think it's going to be a 7-game series. I'm going to say the Nats in 6. There you go. I'm out there. Zelmo, great to see you in the chat room. Kevin's getting ready to type something. We're going to close this off in a moment. But hey, that's what I like to see. I like to see opinions in the chat room, and you don't have to agree with me. This morning, Zelmo, it appears, does, and it appears Kevin is as well. So I'm sure Kevin will take this and run with it at 11 o'clock. But or if he may come on a little sooner since I'm going to be signing off in a minute. I love it too, baby. Way to go. So you know how I am. I will always go out on a limb and I will take a position and then we'll see how it turns out. But write it down, October 21st on Monday, I picked the Nationals in 6. Now let's get back to my fantasy football challenge match with Phil Chaplin yesterday. Let me give you the teams. tell you how it all went. Chappie, he is a football fantasy, baseball fantasy guru. And it's been nothing but a pleasure to get to know Phil and also to have a show with him. It's been great. Now, sometimes we've had trouble with our schedules, but when we've done a show, it's been like the best thing ever since sliced bread. So yesterday, our matchup was this. 2-quarterback league. He has Kyler Murray and Josh Allen at quarterback. I have Jared Goff and Russell Wilson. At running back, he has Marlon Mack and Tevin Coleman. And I have, Ezekiel Elliott and tonight, James White going for the Patriots. At wide receiver, he had Tyreek Hill for Kansas City. And he also had, I lost it for a second, Tyler Lockett for Seattle. I had T.Y. Hilton and Tate for the Giants. Our sort of flex position, he picked DJ Chark for Jacksonville. I had Larry Fitzgerald for Arizona. Defenses, he had New Orleans. I had the Jacksonville Jags. And kickers, he had Fairbairn for Houston, and I had Butler for Kansas City. Currently the score, with me only having James White to play, my team 130.5 and Chappie's 110. So it looks like round one will go to me. Now, there's playoffs and things like that, so certainly not bragging, certainly not anything. Lucky is what I am, because Jared Goff had a comeback game yesterday and threw touchdown passes. Ezekiel Elliott went off against the Eagles. That wasn't predicted. On the downside, Larry Fitzgerald only got me 1.5 points. For Chappie's crowd yesterday, his downside was Kyler Murray. Only scored 7 points in fantasy, and Kyler Murray has been a fantasy king until yesterday. So that's how it went with me and Chappie. Again, the schedule, Kevin Hastings coming up next. Have a great day, everybody. Go get them. Go Nats from Arnie's Fantasy World of Sports.